praised the work of left guard Aaron Brewer as he is locked into a battle with Jamarco Jones for that starting spot next to Taylor Lewan on the offensive line. There was one Titans transaction from earlier this morning. Wide receiver Terry Godwin signed as wideout Juwan Green was waived. Also some injury news around the NFL. Tampa Bay Buccaneers center Ryan Jensen went down during training camp today, was carted off with what head coach Todd Bowles said was a knee injury. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
I got one more broadcast on TV for the...
What was Emily saying?
She said she's happy to come on with you guys whenever.
Oh, good. So, I'm going to text him that you
Let's do this, Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Man, beautiful day today. Happy Thursday to each and every one of you. It's practically the weekend, so just get ready for that. Alex Apple hanging out again today for Blaine. Bishop Brett Batchelor is rocking the wheels of steel right now, as Lucas, I'm sure, is sipping Gatorade and hanging out over at the Titans complex like a big baller.
I was told today that he would be hurrying his way over a lot quicker than yesterday.
Yeah, if yesterday was hurrying, he and my 7-year-old son hurry in the exact same way, which is not at all.
He blamed it on Will Bowling, too, which was, the
Kirby.
exact opposite of Traylon Burks. And
He put it on two people.
Well, my son dropped a baseball. We were playing catch the other day, and he said, well, my glove is still new. I said, a good craftsman never blames his tools.
There you go.
And he didn't understand what that means at all. But
that's kind of like when people play golf. They're like, oh, I got new clubs last week. That's not the clubs.
Let me tell you what, most people that have new clubs that play golf don't need new clubs.
Exactly.
It's like a waste of $900 or $1,000.
Yes. Yeah.
I need new clubs.
If anything, you need to spend that $900 on lessons with the coach rather than new clubs.
Exactly. I'm still not good enough to hit those well. What do I need to be doing?
Well, Alex, you're a basketball guy. Do people ever say anything about like new shoes or anything while they're
New
slipping or getting
balls.
stuck?
But shoes are more of a style.
balls,
Shoes are more of a
basketballs.
style standpoint, and I know that you got to get the swag. You get the new pings. I got to look good in the
Right.
cart. But
I got to look good in the car.
basketball shoes to me is different than getting new clubs.
That's
Let me
fair.
tell you what's not going to make you hit the ball any better. New clubs.
Very true.
Brett Batchelor, our resident golf coach and expert. Gosh, we're starting way early today. People are like,
We are
where's
early.
Buck?
We got a
Who are
minute
these
extra
guys?
yesterday. We get 2 minutes
2 minutes
extra.
today.
I feel like Buck owes us now like 3 minutes worth of pay because we're filling up his slack here. How old are your golf clubs? Again, Brett Batchelor, multi-talented guy here at the Zone, former college golfer. Are your clubs new or are they old?
I have a mix. So there are some
Oh.
clubs that I'm comfortable with that I've kind of kept for a little bit longer, but there are other ones that I'm like, it's either time for a new one or I didn't like it as much. And when in school, we could get them for, practically free. So, it wasn't, and I'm
once
not
upon a
trying
time,
to flex,
our
but-
clubs are practically free.
but it was a lot easier than what it is now. But I have a mix. Some are new, some aren't new.
You get new wedges. I've gotten new wedges,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gotten a new driver because the technology changes. I still have the copper Ping I2s, copper beryllium iron Ping I2s. They're probably 18 years old at this point. My uncle, who used to play a little professionally and teach golf, passed away, and then I got his.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, they still hit it fine.
Dude, the wedges, that's what you have to replace more than anything else in your bag because those are the clubs that you hit more of the times than not the most, and the grooves on those clubs wear away so fast with how much
if you're
you hit
hitting it
them.
on the grooves.
Yeah, correct. But pros, they'll change them out like every 6 months. But if you're being realistic, probably every 2 years or something, it's probably time to get new wedges.
Okay, see, you're teaching people here. I like this. I
Yeah.
know we're going to talk about the Titans. I'm probably
You're
for 2
also
hours.
costing a lot of people
We're
a
gonna
lot
talk
of
about
money.
the
There's a lot
Titans.
of wives right now that will collectively eye roll
You're
once they hear that.
justifying a lot of guys
Yeah.
to go to Golf Galaxy or
I'm just
wherever
trying to help
today.
everyone get better at the game of golf.
I had an uncle from Chicago who I dearly loved, Uncle Buck. True story.
Like the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was like a movie character. And he always told me I was a redneck and that rednecks don't know how to do business deals, that business deals get done playing golf. And rednecks don't know that because we do business deals on a tractor, he said. And so when he died, and he was my buddy, I went to see his widow who lived to be 90, my Aunt Catherine, and she said, Buck wanted to give you something. I was like, oh, I'd forgotten. It was his golf clubs.
Really? Yeah.
They
That's
are...
cool. How, are they old?
Were they wooden woods?
Yes.
Oh, that's
No
awesome.
way. They're persimmon.
A wooden wood, a wooden 3 wood, and I think a wooden 5.
Oh, my
I have them all.
gosh.
Guess whose name is on those rascals?
Ben Hogan.
That's a good one.
That's a great guess.
Not
I'm
Gene
named after
Sarazen.
Ben Hogan.
Not Gene Sarazen. That's a great one,
Yeah.
too.
What's the guy's name?
Oh, I'm putting the golfer on.
Gary
Is
Player.
it Tommy Armour?
And no, and all these are fantastic.
Dang.
Sam Snead.
Oh, Sam
this
Snead.
should be
They're
the
the
most
Sam
obvious one.
Snead signature gloves. I need to bring them in and let you look
yeah,
at them.
seriously, that'd be cool.
But I mean, the few times I ever played golf, I took them out and people were like, and that driver's like smaller than your fist.
Yeah, they're super small.
You know, they make them now, they're like the size of your head. You could go get one of those.
Yeah, just look at Bryson DeChambeau play.
Well,
They'd make a good like ornament here in the studio, right? We got like Coach Mac.
they
with
look
the-
like something that would be hanging up in a
We
Chili's.
just put some wooden irons back here, you know.
They would be hanging up in a Chili's, like in the rafters of a Chili's, you know, next to a red wagon
Yeah,
and
up
you
on
know
the
a
wall.
football jersey from the
Yeah.
local team and my golf clubs from my uncle who. Today's Titans practice. We'll go ahead and get with that. Sorry about the excursion there into amateur golfing. But it was a jog through today. So everybody's out there and we're watching. They split up for team. And like everybody, just instinctively, you can look up and down the row of media members and, you know, Jim Wyatt. And I'm thinking, well, Jim Wyatt doesn't have his pin out. This is interesting because he can always tell you, like yesterday, I didn't even notice this. Jim Wyatt put this out in his practice summary. I was there. I saw all of it. Ryan Tannehill was 11 of 11 yesterday in 7-on-7 and team. It's 11 of 11.
Wow.
So the chemistry thing, it's coming along. Guys obviously are catching the ball for that to happen. He hit 2 like 40-plus yard passes on consecutive plays to start 7-on-7. One for a touchdown to NWI, and then another play of the day. Traylon Burks like completely stretching his giant body out, like catching the ball, pulling it in, flopping over, landing on his back. I mean, it's amazing.
And
So-
we learned yesterday that Tannehill had been there the 2 days prior, which was sort of a lot of the younger guys are there. We had heard that Caleb Farley had picked a couple of passes off and that Traylon Burks was running well. And we were wondering who throws in the ball. We learned Tannehill was there. And then I think today, I mean, reading between the lines of what Robert Woods said, I think he was there. He talked about Farley looking good in one of those days and picking off 2 passes. As far as that showing a willingness to form that cohesion and that, well, I mean, Ryan Tannehill's thrown to a whole new group of pass catchers almost entirely. So that extra work is invaluable.
Well, we talked about this yesterday, and Ryan Tannehill, like anybody, seemed put out when everything happened with A.J. Brown. Of course, fans were mad. Mike Vrabel didn't look happy on the TV broadcast of the draft when all that went down. Now, maybe he just had to go to the bathroom or had eaten a piece of fish that didn't agree
It
with
would
him
have
or
been the
something.
weirder reaction to not be that put out.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you're losing a great player.
So there are a lot of people who seem put out. Tannehill, didn't report to that first voluntary thing, and so we all kind of speculated. Well, I think he had, he mentioned, hey, I want to spend a couple more times. It's something going on at home. I guess he still, has his regular home in Miami. A lot of guys still live in the city where they started or the city where they went to college or whatever. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But a lot of fans just wanted to hear from Tannehill because you heard from him right after the game, after the playoff loss. And then on locker cleanout day, it was essentially only defensive guys who spoke that day. So I don't know how it all worked out or whatever, but no one heard from Tannehill again. So they really wanted to hear from him. But since he has shown up, all he has done is show up. That's just show up again and again and again for everything. And then you look at him starting with a bang yesterday, and I think we all expect great things from this defense. If this defense isn't top 5 this year, then something bad has happened.
I think it's because the cornerbacks haven't met our expectations.
Oh, there you go. Young cornerbacks. And the loss of Buster Scream, discussed this. Greg Maben has played 5 years in the NFL. He may not even be on the team, but he's the senior cornerback. To me, it's between Chris Jackson and Greg Maben who will get that last spot maybe that Buster Scream would have gotten. Now, it's a numbers game, and you may keep an extra corner instead of something else who just plays special teams. I get that. But Buster Screen leaving, he was an 11-year guy. So it's a young room. The reports so far on Caleb Farley have just been fantastic. And even what we saw from him in the offseason was like sometimes he didn't have his knee brace on.
Right.
And then he and Robert Woods both showed up, no knee brace.
What did you make of what Robert Woods had to say today about Caleb Farley? Did you catch that?
I did. Do we have that, Brett? We have Robert Woods talking about Caleb Farley? Brett
I'll
Baxter
give you a quick thought about it while he's
nodding
pulling it up.
vigorously here.
I think that Woods' veteran presence is certainly important for the wide receiver group in this team, which is young. I think it's also really important for a guy like Caleb Farley. They've been rehabbing together, working together, running a hill together, so they have done a ton together. And he even went so far as to say he's used Farley as a resource, which I found encouraging. He probably wouldn't have said that about every young player. But can you imagine the resource he probably is for Tennessee's young cornerbacks as well? You've been playing the game long enough spots, Buffalo, now in L.A., and now at Tennessee, as he has. You can recognize a guy that you can pick on. You can recognize that tendencies. You can recognize something with his first step, his hips. I think that they don't have a veteran like that in the cornerback room. I think Robert Woods is much an asset to them as he is to the receivers.
I think all that's true. I always like listening to Robert Woods. I've tried to make a request for him already to try to get him on this show, because if you haven't heard from him, I think you'd really like it. But it came up yesterday from Mike Vrabel, John Robinson. They were actually the day before camp started. They were discussing Caleb Farley, and they mentioned he and Robert Woods working out together. And Brett, you've got that. This was Robert Woods from earlier today discussing those workouts with Caleb Farley.
For me, Caleb is he's a resource for me as well. I know he's a young player, but he's young, talented, strong, fast, quick. And I think for me, being able to train with him and rehab with him, being able to do some of these shuttle presses, run hills with him, work releases with him. So that's someone, even just condition with him. That's somebody who I could work with, who we could work with each other and feed off of each other. Being able to run hills, having somebody next to me compete, and then come out here and work releases, and we have being able to work through releases and talk about my experience and what he likes and how he plays. And really just, like I said, it's still in reps any kind of way that we can, but just really having somebody who's young, being able to keep me young and being able to just work and run and really just feel youthful like that.
You know, one of the largest cliches in the sports world, iron sharpens iron. That's always funny when that, or I'm going to give 110%. I know that just chaps Brett Doherty's hide if anybody ever says that, because his thing is, how is that possible? There's only 100% of anything, and I agree. But, boy, that's a tough process. It's a tedious process. Everyone who goes through it just talks about every day. Okay, you get up, you do the same thing. You do this, you go to rehab, then you ice and stem, and then you stretch it, and then you whatever. But to have another guy, and we talked about this. The Titans are counting on both of those guys. Like Caleb Farley needs to start, and Robert Woods really needs to play like a 2A or a 1B receiver
from week one,
from the jump. They both need to. So to hear Robert Woods, who I've enjoyed every time I've heard him speak to anybody, he gives thoughtful answers. This is, like you said, a veteran guy who's been really good on two different NFL teams, and really is only here. I mean, did you see the tributes paid to him by Rams when he left?
Sure, speaks volumes.
I mean, I think the Rams capologist should win a Nobel Prize in math. I've been on record. If they offer that, I'm going to get a tweet from somebody smart who says, "Hey, dummy, that's not a thing." But I think
they seem to always find space for the guys that they need to keep.
But inevitably, you can't keep everybody. So how does that work out? Well, can't keep Robert Woods. Can't keep him. So the Titans were the benefit of that, and again, seeing he and Caleb Farley continue to both look like they look. Again, today was a jog through. There were no like live 7-on-7s or teams. And we can say this guy did well or that well. We can't really tell you where people lined up. But I can tell you today was a jog through, just a bunch of people jogging. We've got Phillip and Gallatin on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline. Will Selva of the NFL Network is going to join us in segment 2 of the first hour of the show. But let's grab Phillip right quick. Phillip, thanks for calling Blaine and Mickey. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Love your show, man. There's an old rock song that says, "Can't you see what that woman's been doing to me?" Yeah. I kind of feel that way with the Titans sometimes, and I can honestly say I drink more now, being a Titans fan. And, through the roller coaster of emotions with Tannehill going out the way he did last year and getting rid of the best receiver that ever, I guess, put on a uniform other than Derek Mason, I just want to know, and I want to ask this question to get y'all's honest opinion. What is the difference? How do you know when you ain't got faith in your team and you're just in denial? Ain't there a fine line in that? So I just want to hear what you got to say about that. Faith in your team and living in denial.
Philip, first of all, for referencing Marshall Tucker Band lyrics on the show, that'll always get you points with me. That is, honestly, if Will Selva wasn't on, we could just go ahead and do the whole show from that question. It's one of the
on
great.
faith versus denial.
My goodness, that is one of the all-time great questions. And I'll tell you this. We could say, right now, we could tweet out, we think Ryan Tannehill is going to have the best year of his career. And there'd be some Titans fans who responded and said, heck yeah, I agree. I believe that. He's the best quarterback ever for the Titans. He's going to get right over those interceptions. I have no fear of that. He's going to be great. And there's other people who are going to say, y'all are the stupidest people I've ever met. He's no good. Malik Willis is going to be the starter by week 7 this year, and you guys are too dumb to know that. So there's everything in between. So the denial versus hope or versus faith. Ooh.
That's the ebb and flow of being a fan. Nobody is ever always logical when it comes to something that you love.
No.
Not in your love life, not with your friends, not with your kids, not with your team.
Not with wanting to be the base player for the Scorpions.
How many times we've discussed a lot of Ryan Tannehill and you have faith in him that he might even get another contract with the Titans. And I said, after standing up there and watching him yesterday, you're going to have somebody be really, really good to beat him. The point is the Titans are winning double-digit games with him as quarterback. Yeah. We know what happened in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Malik Willis is going to have to be really, really good to take that guy's job. I think that's just being honest, right? I hope Malik Willis is the second coming of Lamar Jackson, right?
Here it comes in the zone. Right. Alex hates Malik Willis. He hates him.
But on the other hand, I can sit up here and tell you that there have been times where it is just makes you mad when Derrick Henry comes off the field on 3rd and 1 and they brought in Jeremy McNichols because they were pass protecting. They gave that away and they were going to block. And you have no means to make any sense of that in your mind. You get out to the tailgate with your family and your friends in the parking lot and you can't believe it. We got to get rid of Todd Downing. This guy stinks, right? You ebb between, even the smartest of fans ebb between faith and denial. The good news is, from a macro perspective, I don't think that the Titans fans have unrealistic expectations for this team.
Well,
some would say they've been depleted.
Oh, I think
they've pulled back from a national perspective.
Oh,
why couldn't this? I think this team can win as many games in the regular season as that team did last year. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but I don't think there's a chance. I don't think that's a blue two-tone blue tinted glasses ridiculous comment to make. Where you're in denial, where you can't see the forest for the trees.
Well, there are always people who have the most rosy-colored glasses, and then there are always people who have the brownest-colored glasses because they think it's all going to go to poo every year. So, and then there's everything in between. But the extremes, it's sort of like if anybody says anything political, you get the extreme takes, and we're not a political show. I don't want to open this can of worms. But you always have the most extreme people on both sides who weigh in. So people go, oh, my gosh, everyone's so divided. Well, at the end of the day, there's a lot more people who maybe trend somewhere towards in the middle. And that's the same way for fandom of a football team. You just hear the most from the biggest fanatics who are either, this is great,
the loudest voice
they're
in the
the
room.
best ever,
Yeah.
or the guy who says this sucks and they're never going to do anything. So it's always somewhere in the middle. But, man, what a fantastic question. And we would talk about it longer. But, A, we got to take a break. And, B, Will Selva of Good Morning Football on the NFL Network is going to join us on the other side. He's a great guest. We can get into a bunch of stuff with him, and you don't want to miss it. That's next.
Sometimes the past really does predict the future. There's a guy that started his business while living in a beat-up single-wide trailer for 7 years in order to save money for expansion. Starting vehicle repair in a single-car garage in just 90 days in downtown Franklin, and then moving to his barn in front of his trailer, and then moving to Southeast Parkway on the south side of Franklin, and then moving to Columbia Avenue in downtown Franklin. And finally, yes, finally, to a full facility location on Royal Oaks, close to the interstate in Franklin. And now also in 100 Oaks, Murfreesboro, and Belmead. The guy's name? Aaron Stokes. owner of Eurofix, fixing everything European that drives and offering quality repairs that beat the dealer without dealer pricing. There's a lot more to the past since 1999. But for the future, Eurofix can help keep you off the tow truck and out of the repair shop. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX Monday through Friday, or you can just visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. But always tell them, Blaine sent ya.
Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. Alex Apple hanging out today. Double A for the Hitman, who continues to get some well-earned R&R ahead of football season, which once football season starts, away we go, and we are going away. So why not bring in one of our football experts, our buddy Will Selva from the NFL Network and Good Morning Football, who joins us now. Will, what's it like around NFL Network, like when training camps open? Are people giddy like the elves around Santa at Christmas?
Some like that. I mean, there's definitely a palpable buzz in the air. There's a lot of scurrying around. We're like the Keebler elves, I think, more like it, just because I'm a big cookie guy. But I think there's definitely this sense of excitement, to start a new season. I mean, because we've had all these different off-season storylines that we've talked about, and it's like now we get a chance to see some of these new acquisitions, these new faces and new places, et cetera. So we're excited, we're giddy, and we're bringing the coverage big time to everybody.
Well, and you've also got a new lineup for Good Morning Football. You added a guy that we know well, in Jason McCourty, and, of course, the great Jamie Erdahl as well. But a fantastic new crew, man. Congratulations on your new family.
Thank you very much. I had a chance to actually hang out with them last week, and I know the show's in great hands. I'm super pumped for them. Both I've admired from afar. Jason for what he's done in his 13-year career. No, he was with the Titans the longest, but we've seen what he's done in his career where he's won a Super Bowl. He's also been on a team that has gone over, and he's just as cool to talk to. He's got stories for days. And then you got Jamie as well, who is so professional and loved what she did on the sidelines for those CBS SEC games and also those tournament games. Playful, fun, brings analysis. So I'm excited. It's a new chapter. I know it's reinvigorated myself, Kyle, and Peter. So it's a fun time. I'm really glad I had a chance to meet them last week.
I just wonder if there are homework clauses in their contracts.
Well, we all listen. Mickey, we all have our independent study programs, and so my 4 hours is up already. I did it like on Monday. So, anything else that I do is gravy at this point in time. So think about that, like that independent study, that coming out about Kyler Murray's contract is unbelievable, right? I mean, this is why you want training camp to start, because of those sorts of storylines that dominate what we're talking about, right? And Kyler came out today and said he felt insulted that it came out and how much he's given to the game and how much preparation that he has to do. So needless to say, that's something that comes out. That'll be a little sticky for the Cardinals down there.
Yeah, very well could be. Will Selva, our guest. And Will, I got my sidekick Alex Apple hanging out today for the Hitman, so you guys can say hello to each other.
Will, it's great to have you on.
Hello.
Thanks for jumping on with us. I'm curious, though.
Great to have you on.
You probably know, though. I mean, is the knock on Kyler Murray, if football is termed a thinking man's game for the quarterback, is the knock that he's not a thinking man? I mean, what did that surprise you that was maybe an issue within that building?
I think if the level of commitment is what, to me, was surprising. One of our insiders, Mike Garafolo, had reported earlier how that was a concern for the Cardinals. The amount of preparation, the body language on the sidelines. He's not a rah-rah guy. And he has relied on his God-given ability. I mean, he's got the skill set. He can be electrifying. But I think when you see sometimes when things are going wrong for the Cardinals, especially these last two seasons where they've really faded in the second half, they did not play particularly well against the Rams. In fact, they played awful. And so that's what brings up these sorts of questions. And for this to be released, for this to be leaked out there, obviously there was a concern from the team's point of view that they want to have this out there to maybe make him be more accountable. And so it's a little bit of a concern, to be honest with you, because they've put forth a lot of money and a big-time investment in him. And if the body language and level of commitment is a concern, I definitely, it makes me pause a little bit, especially given how they performed down the stretch the last 2 years.
I mean, it just strikes me as 4 hours is not that much either. I would think the average NFL average has got to be 15, right? I mean, and to put that in there suggests that, like, not that they're going to be sitting there with a stopwatch with them, but, like, we got to get at least 4, right? I mean, it works. Anyway, let's talk Titans. A caller in the last segment.
Sure.
As my guidance counselor said, aim low. So,
Jeez. Don't ask too much of this guy.
I like your guidance counselor.
Yes.
Show up to practice. Don't leave right after we're done. That's
Right.
basically what that is. A caller called in last segment. He brought up a great question. But between fans being delusional and just being hopeful on their team, and when hope kind of becomes delusion, and Mickey has said several times this week, and I've agreed with him, that the Titans' defense this year, as you look at that unit, needs to be a top 5 group. Scoring defense last year, they were top 5. They tied with the Bucks, 20.8 points per game, I think it was. The pass rush was much improved. They had 43 sacks, which was putting them top 10. As you look at this group and think about how other groups around the NFL have changed this offseason, is that realistic or is that delusional for the Titans to have a top 5 defense? How good could that unit be?
That's a great question because I do like what Autry has done, Simmons, Dupree, Landry. I mean, those guys are monsters, and we saw what they did, especially against the Bengals. They get after it, getting those 9 sacks. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited to see what the secondary is going to do. Kristen Fulton's a player, that zone corner, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but he's always around the ball, it seems like. So he's somebody who I think can be really good, as well as Elijah Molden as well, playing in the slot, does a little bit of everything. I believe the completion rate after week 6 for him had been something like under 50%, which is great. And then you also have a former first-round pick in Caleb Farley, who I think can really make an impact. For him, the key is health, right? And so I think this unit does have the potential to be a top 5 unit. Now, part of what is reliant for them is that running game on the other side, where they can grind down teams, milk that clock a little bit, so that way these guys can be a little bit fresher. They can be ready to go after the quarterback. So, yeah, I definitely think that's possible. But again, it's like we have to see how that secondary develops. If they develop how I think we would all want them to be, without a doubt. If there's questions, if there's health issues, then that would be tough to do because then you're relying on those guys up front.
The great Will Selva from NFL Network on with us, our buddy. So the Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. They won 12 games. We all saw what happened in the playoffs. No one seems to be expecting them to get past the Colts this year. I've seen, I saw a record prediction, I think, from USA Today the other day that said they would be under 500 this year. Do you think the disconnect with the Titans, Will, is that the last thing people saw from Ryan Tannehill and they're expecting him to fall off a cliff? Is it because the Titans don't have A.J. Brown anymore and we all know how good he was? Is it a combination of things? Why aren't more people buying into the Titans?
I do think, if you look at A.J. Brown and the absence that he's created there, he accounted for something like 23% of the total receiving yards for the Titans. And so that's a nice chunk. I remember when he came back and he played, he was hurt against the 49ers, and he made such an impact in that game. And you saw what he brought, the physicality, stretching the field. And now you bring in a guy like Robert Woods, who is well-liked and respected in locker rooms. We saw that with the Rams, especially him and Cooper Kupp had a really special bond. He's a guy that is pretty sure-handed, rarely drops the ball, so he's very steady. But we have to see how he's going to recover from that torn ACL. And then with Treylon Burks, he's already making some eye-popping catches, and it sounds like Tannehill is slowly but surely developing a little bit of a chemistry with him. But he was a little bit behind the 8 ball with not really participating with those asthma and conditioning issues of his that he was dealing with. But, he was great at getting yak in Arkansas. He was, I think, 7th among FBS receivers in yak. So I think for Titans fans, what makes you a little bit nervous is that the window is open, in my opinion, still, because you do have the Derrick Henry that's there. And Tannehill knows how to get this team to the playoffs. The issue is more what they do when they get there. He's had those back-breaking interceptions in the fourth quarter against the Ravens and against the Bengals. So I do think the Colts have gotten better than the Titans, because if you look at what the Titans have done in the offseason, they also got Austin Hooper. But I do think the Titans got a little bit better. I mean, they got Stephon Gilmore, they got Ngakoue that they added onto that defense, and Jonathan Taylor's a top 5 back, and then you got Matt Ryan there. And I think that's what they were missing, is kind of the steadying hand of Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan did not play like the Matt Ryan of old last season for the Falcons, but he certainly seems to be an upgrade over Carson Wentz, considering you were talking about down the stretch with the Cardinals, when we were talking about Kyler Murray, the Colts fell apart. And we saw what the Jaguars did to them the last game of the season, and Carson Wentz was a big part of that. So if you look at it on paper, who do I think got better? I do think the Colts got better, but the Titans really need to stay healthy. And I think that's going to be a key. And they need to have guys like Burks really step up. Woods needs to step up. And we're talking about that defense. The secondary really needs to step up.
That's great stuff, Will. It's interesting. The Colts seem to get picked every year. And even we look at their lineup sometimes and think, oh, my gosh. And after the draft every year, right? Blaine always says, it seems like they only draft names that you know. So you instantly are like, well, that guy's pretty good. I know him. They haven't won the AFC South since 2014. Even the Jags have won it since they last won it.
It's crazy. And again, if you look at the Colts, they have Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye, did he set the world on fire? No, but he played really well for them still, where I mean, I think he was like third among rookies in pressures and that sort of thing. And I think they're going to be expecting him to take another step in his second year, and he showed that power to really finish. And then they have Gus Bradley there, who's had success with defenses. So to your point, it does feel like they get names all the time. Even it's like Michael Pittman was a stud for USC, and then he's there. Ballard knows like that there's pressure now, that they're feeling it, from fans there in Indianapolis and also from Irsay, the owner. I mean, they've got the offensive line, they got the big uglies, as Sean O'Hara likes to say it. They've got the running backs, they got wide receivers, they got a defense that they added to. So, I mean, the Colts are going to be tough, and it'll be fun to see kind of the back and forth between those teams, because we were talking about if the Titans have improved. If you look in that division, I mean, even the Jaguars, at least on paper, they improved. They've now have a Super Bowl winning head coach. They've got now wide receivers, and they improved that offensive line for Lawrence down there. Now, we can debate on whether those signings were actually great signings or money well spent, but at least it felt like they got better. And then you look at with the Texans, then they have Levy Smith there, and they're expecting big things from Davis Mills, and they really seem to be buying into his skill set. So that's why it just seems like the Titans didn't make as many splashes. If anything, it just felt like the big one was losing A.J. Brown, and by losing him, it just brings up a lot of questions about their passing game, about Tannehill and Vrabel kind of feeling that pressure. Even says like, we don't try to rely on talent so much, but it's like you got to still rely on talent, because those are the players that are going out there and playing, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We're relying on the talents of Will Selva, who joins us now from NFL Network.
Well, Alex, again, I think one of the things that needles me, and I know it does other Titans here, and I don't know why I'm as bothered by this as I am. It doesn't really matter other than the players on the field in the long run, though, is sort of this idea, and you'll have a different perspective on this than we will, that Chris Ballard is one of the best GMs in the league. He might be. His record, though, in 5 years is 41-40. John Robinson's record in 6 years with the Titans is 59-38. You'll never hear John Robinson's name brought up to the extent that Ballard's is. Chris Ballard could go 17-0 this year and have a worse record than John Robinson after his 6 years. So I'm just curious, why does it, to me, to a lot of fans, and to me, it comes off with this love affair of Chris Ballard. And people say, well, he didn't have a quarterback. Well, neither did John Robinson. right? He found Ryan Tannehill. He found an option. So
Yeah.
am I missing something as to why Ballard is thought of so handsomely?
So you're not bowing at the altar of Chris Ballard? Is that what I'm trying to gather from this question? Double A. I think to your point, you guys had raised it before, is the big names. And you keep saying, "Oh wow, look at Quinn Nelson over there. Oh wow, look at Jonathan Taylor. Oh wow." So I think that the names are more wow names. What Robinson has done in Tennessee, I think, does get overlooked. I really do, because I think Tennessee across the board, I think to NFL fans, think of just smash mouth, just give it to Derrick Henry, and then sit back and watch him do his thing, and stiff arm guys into the upside down. And there are obviously more than that. And he deserves way more credit for what he did when he had Mariota. Then he ends up getting Tannehill, who was wildly inconsistent. I mean, really inconsistent. He had Adam Gase, did not perform well. He's a backup. And then he comes out of nowhere, and he guides the team in the regular season and in the postseason, and then doing it again, then gets the big contract. So, yeah, no, I agree. It's like, it's like Bud Dupree has worked out. Danico Autry has worked out. I mean, there have been acquisitions that they've made that just don't get the kind of love that Chris Ballard does, or that the Colts get, because I think that people are infatuated with those big names. People want to talk, Taylor and Pittman and Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye is a great name to say. So I think that might be part of it. I don't know if Double A, if that answers your question, or if you're feeling what I'm saying there. But to your point, I do see it. I mean, I never really thought about it, but I see what you're saying.
It does answer the question. I had to throw some red meat out there for the audience. I know that will be a question with a high approval rating.
All right, we got like 30 seconds left. Tomorrow's another opportunity for the NFL to 5 o'clock news dump the Deshaun Watson news. Is tomorrow going to be the Friday at 5 o'clock that comes out?
I would certainly think so, although we thought it was going to be the case a week ago at this time, or maybe earlier this week. So if there was a time to do it, it would be then. But clearly, Sue Robinson is on her own page. So we all have to wait with breathless anticipation, guys.
Well, here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Will, thank you, man. Great stuff. Always. People need to follow you at Will Silva TV, and they need to be watching you on NFL Network. You guys do such a fantastic job, and we always love talking to you. Thanks for the time again, buddy. I know you're busy.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care. Always a pleasure. We'll talk soon, all right?
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Will.
It's our guy, Will Silva. Love catching up with him. He is the absolute best. He's fantastic on
I missed
TV.
what he said. My headphones were off. What did he say at the beginning of that question that made you laugh after I asked him about Robinson and Ballard? I knocked my headphones quiet.
Oh, I mean, I think I was just laughing when you said Chris Ballard is 41-40 as a GM. I think we were all just enjoying that.
I mean, he could. I think that
stat.
point will land that. I think the one stat that I threw out in there that would land that point he could go 17-0 and have a worse record than John Robinson after the.
It's a stat of the day. It's another stat. Titan schedule. Depending on what metric you look at, right? Some people say, it's the this easiest schedule, so whatever. Well, there's one metric that's going to be pretty darn tough. And Alex Apple was on the case early this morning. What is that metric that will make the Titan schedule tough? About to share that rascal with you next on Blaine and Mickey. Blaine and Mickey 1045, The Zone. Alex Apple hanging out for the hitman, Blaine Bishop, today. It's funny you picked this song. My son really likes this song.
Bringing on the Heartbreak?
Yes, by Def Leppard. There are 2 versions of the song. Did you know that?
2 versions by Def Leppard?
Yes, there's one without keyboards, which is the original version, and then they wanted it to get played on MTV, and they said, send a version with keyboards.
Seriously?
Yes, there's a version with keyboards.
Why did MTV need a keyboard version?
Because in those days, MTV could tell you anything. They'd say, you need to have a version of this where a guy just screams the whole way, and they'd be like, no problem. And they'd go in the studio and they'd record it. One of the greatest, here we go. I promise I'll get to this Alex Apple stat. One of the more interesting things of all time. There's a band Whitesnake, right? Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know Whitesnake, you know who Whitesnake is. David Coverdale went back several times and got songs from early albums and recut them. Here I Go Again was from an album in 1982. And he re-recorded it. Well, the version that gets played on classic rock stations of Here I Go Again is the version that was on the album.
The original.
No, there's the 1982 version, which I really like, which went nowhere. But he did Fool for Your Love. And Whitesnake has several songs that were old that they just redid that became legitimate top 40 hits for a hair metal band.
Huh.
There's a complete other version that Dan Huff, who's from Nashville, that's just a guitar hero and a great producer, one of my all-time favorite guitar players, and he went in the studio and played completely different guitar parts. And that's the one that comes on like a pop station because it gets played everywhere.
Yeah.
It's literally, the song is bulletproof. It can be played on any station except for a country station. But there's 3 different versions. There's the one from 82. There's the one from 87, which was on the Whitesnake album. And then there's a whole other version with different guitar parts and a ton of keyboards that was put out for pop radio. It's not the same song.
So it's like the movie industry now, just remaking stuff.
Yes. But there were several Whitesnake songs where he's like, fancy, we'll just do that one again. And if you hear David Coverdale speak, he sounds like Richard Attenborough. He doesn't sound at all like you think David Coverdale would sound. Now, one thing David Coverdale could not do, he could turn old songs into new hits. He didn't play quarterback against the Titans this year. So, I'm hustling around this morning and I'm trying to get things done. And Alex Apple sends over a text to Lucas Panzica and me, and it says something like this. According to Mike Sando, the Titans face the second hardest schedule of opposing quarterbacks. Only the Chiefs face a tougher slate. Well, Chiefs have got to play the other teams in their own division. The Titans face 5 guys, says Alex Apple via Mike Sando. He had in his Tier 1, so 5 Tier 1 quarterbacks, 4 in Tier 2, and only 2 Tier 4 guys. And, of course, that's Davis Mills of the Texans and Daniel Jones, who they will see week 1 with the Giants. This stands out, says Alex Apple, because the other teams facing the toughest slate are basically all the AFC West teams.
And the Titans
who have to play them, which so do the Colts, so do the Texans, so do the Jags. But when the schedule came out, Blaine and me were talking about it, and, I know some people think, it's the biggest crutch in the world if you just go over every game and say win or loss. I think our buddy I saw several people do things kind of making fun of that when the schedule came out. We actually didn't do that. But we just started to look at the quarterbacks, and I'm like, okay, here you go, Blaine. This says the Titans have the 17th hardest schedule or whatever. Well, all those metrics typically are just based on the winning percentage of the teams from the year before. Well, NFL teams lose 35% of the players. It's not even the same team. The Broncos.
Right.
That's a completely different team this year. Yes, completely
ridiculous.
Worthless metrics. So Blaine's thing was look at all the quarterbacks they got to face. Well, Mike Sando's basically echoing that, and you caught that this morning. It is a murderer's row of quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was laying in bed when I texted you that and came across that crap sandwich.
Eating bonbons.
And it comes... The Titans start the season with the Giants. Daniel Jones is one of the 2 Tier 4 quarterbacks that they're going to face. Then they play Bills and Raiders, and then they kind of go through the division for a little while. 2 Colts, 2 out of 3 weeks, which is always with a bye week in between. It's always such a weird setup that the Titans are done playing the Colts again by October 23rd
Yeah.
this year. But just like last season, you get sort of a murderer's row in the middle of the season. Remember this stretch. Last year, the Titans faced Josh Allen. They faced Patrick Mahomes. Who were on the other two sides of that stretch for the Titans last year? I don't recall. I remember it being a 4-game stretch.
Wasn't
and the
it
Titans
Matthew Stafford?
Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
They showed out, went 3-1.
Yes.
So they've got a similar stretch this year where on November 6th, basically the month of November, they play Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Broncos, Russell Wilson, Packers, Aaron Rodgers, Bengals, Joe Burrow, who might be the 4 guys at the end of the season that you say are the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, probably certainly in the top 2. Burrow has that potential. Maybe Russell Wilson is a top 5, more top 10 guy. You could debate that all day long. But what a tough stretch. And you get on the road in Arrowhead and on the road in Lambeau, 2 of the very most difficult places to play. Cornerbacks, be ready. Caleb Farley, enjoy your training camp. It's about to get harder.
And that's what do I keep saying about the defense? It has to be what?
Top 5.
It has to be a top
That'll
5
be tested.
defense. I mean, it has to be a top 5 defense. There's too many tests. And what you can't afford to do is go and let Davis Mills carve you up and lose to the Texans with Danny Amendola.
That's the other tier 4 guy that they
ends
face.
his career. Like, I can't top that.
Other than Daniel Jones? Like, Davis Mills has at least a chance, a shot in the dark to move up, to be a significantly better quarterback than that. Is there any excuse for the Titans to lose the Texans this year? No. But, I mean, I don't think Davis Mills is an also-ran. Or an
people are saying
afterthought.
if he'd come out this year, he would have been the first quarterback taken. There were multiple myriad of people who said, if he waited another year, he probably would have been top quarterback off the board.
The only 3 good quarterbacks the Titans don't face, seemingly, they face them in the preseason when they get Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray. I have no idea if any of those 3 will play. But if you were drawing Ravens, Bucks, and Cardinals up in your regular season, that would have been about the 3 other best quarterbacks that you could have faced. Point being, driving home your point, and Will, that we just had on last segment, echoed this. Will Selva said, I don't think that we're being unrealistic to say that the Titans have a chance to be a top 5 defense. If you look at scoring, 20.8 points per game last year, the Titans were top 5, tied for 5th with the Buccaneers. Now you've got to duplicate that effort.
Well, if I'm going to be top 5 in anything, I'd pick scoring. In one of the season previews, and in Blaine and I had something that we discussed. I'm trying to remember exactly what the gist of it was, but if it was a preseason power poll or if it was just like however it was ranking teams. And the reason it was maybe an ESPN poll or CBS Sports, but the reason they didn't like the Titans was because of how low they ranked passing the ball and how low they ranked stopping the pass. They were like in the 20s in pass defense. They were number 1 or number 2 against the rush.
But the perception, yes, that's the number, I think. But wouldn't you have said after last season the perception of that pass defense was very different? I mean, they had 9 freaking sacks in the playoff game and lost. You couldn't have even bet that in Vegas. They would have said there's not a chance that happens. Right? The pass rush was getting after the quarterback to an extent that I think that was masking those numbers. I'm not disputing those numbers. They are what they are. But was masked by a pass rush that at the end of the year was really coming on.
Well, and they did have the ability. You were talking about that murderer's row of teams. I mean, Chiefs couldn't do anything against them. They knocked Mahomes out of the game at the end. I thought they'd really hurt him at the end of the game. They weren't trying to. Remember, his head hit somebody's knee on a play late in the game, and he got up and staggered off. It was a scary moment.
Right.
And they sacked. Big Jeff had 3 sacks in the first half against the Rams. Teams seem to stack up yards against them a couple of times, and I think about them just really not having anything. Davis Mills to Danny Amendola for 100-plus yards.
Yeah, and there was a Trevor Lawrence half where he
Yes.
threw it all over him, I think, for 200 yards in the first half.
Well, then the other one that I think will haunt Titans fans is against the Jets, where the guy likes his mom's friends were out there.
Homeboy looked like he was headed to the
Zach
Canton,
Wilson
Ohio.
was doing like the 70s thing where he's like waving people down the field while he's, running out to his right and just like, no deeper, no further than that. No, go.
As far as I can throw it.
And then just, wow. Yeah. So there were some moments where things got away from them. They're not a 20-something pass defense by no metric, especially with a healthy Bud Dupree, another year of Danico Autry, Big Jeff. Think of all this, the pass rush summit and everything he did. He's only going to be better. Yeah. And then Harold Landry, who never leaves the field.
Well, I think Zach Cunningham is a big improvement, too. maybe he's not a big improvement. I think he's an improvement over Rashaan Evans, who was no zone coverage specialist. Correct?
Oh, Zach,
I mean, Cunningham is a downhill player. He'll hit you, might lead the league in tackles.
it's funny, like
But Rashaan Evans was a negative, right? I mean, is that fair for Rashaan Evans? He was a negative in pass coverage last year.
He was basically they ended the year with a luxury of having Rashaan Evans and Jayon Brown as backups.
Yeah.
They were just plus level backups. Just remember, Rashaan Evans didn't dress for
Which is incredible linebacker depth. But
Rashaan Evans didn't dress in the last preseason game or either
the last regular season game.
last regular season game. I think that's the game he didn't even dress for. Rashaan Evans, who was a first round pick, didn't dress.
And is a serviceable, solid linebacker.
Yeah. And he's going to be back with Dean Pease in Atlanta. It's his best year
Probably
under Dean
make it
Pease.
better, yeah.
So Dean Pease will find ways to use him. And that's not to say that Shane Bowen couldn't, but what Dean Pease does, sometimes a coordinator and a player, it's like Forrest and Jenny,
There's a
or peas
synergy
and carrots,
there.
peanut and butter and jelly. Yeah, there's just something that works. And hopefully that works well for both of them. Hopefully it works well for all the Titans who are on the Falcons now. Maybe they can
Anthony Firks, or they can all go out and hang out together.
That's right.
Reminisce.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We'll come back. Hour number 2 of the program. So Traylon Burks, right? He comes back. He's practicing. He has a good day 1. Well, something happened on day 2. Normally, we can't tell you that it happened, but it came up in the post-practice press availability. He was doing something a little different today, and we're going to tell you what it was and hear from Mike Vrabel about it next.
It is 1:59. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Another day of training camp for the Tennessee Titans from St. Thomas Sports Park. Everybody healthy, including wide receiver Robert Woods, who discussed the recovery of his knee after an ACL tear late last season with the LA Rams.
It's strong enough. It's prepared. It's healed. It's more so about just actually doing it. So that's my mentality when I go out here and practice is push it and go. And you almost want to push it to the limits and see what you can do. And that's what I'm trying to do.
The Titans will be back at it tomorrow morning, and the Buck Rising Show will be broadcasting live once again with rookie wide receiver Kyle Phillips joining the show right after practice. A little bit of injury news around the league down in Tampa Bay as they celebrate the signing of Julio Jones with the Buccaneers. Center Ryan Jensen went down today with what head coach Todd Bowles said was a knee injury. He was carted off the field. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome back to Blaine and Mickey. Second hour of the program already here. We're rolling around on a Thursday. We'll be on the weekend before you know it. I'm Alex Apple. Blaine Bishop still enjoying some great time off. Mickey Ryan is here today.
Hello.
Lucas, one of the things you just said in that update caught my ear there. Mickey, I don't know if you saw this Ryan Jensen, the Bucks center, taken off. He was a highly thought. He is a very highly thought of center in the league, and that makes a big difference with Tom Brady. And I'm certain the synergy that Tom Brady has with everything in his life, he certainly has with Jensen as well. A big loss for the Bucks there. That's a season-ending knee injury. I mean, this is the point of the year where you just hold your breath every day that Mike Vrabel doesn't come to the podium or that you're out there and you don't see somebody walking off or carried off that you know changes the fortune of your franchise, your team's season. You gave us a good tease, though, before the break.
Yeah, and this is the other thing about this time of year, and I had made a quick pit stop. I appreciate you bringing us back in there. That was that right. Fast turnaround.
My best Mickey Ryan
impersonation. It was a very fast turnaround on that break there. Alex hanging out for the Hitman. Again today, hour number 2. A caller, Darth Raider, called in and asked about Ndamukong Suh, and we were like, well, he's not on a team yet. And we were jokingly saying he's waiting for after training camp. But for those handful of vets who are still at home, whether it's Will Fuller or Emmanuel Sanders or any number of guys, anytime somebody gets injured who's a top-line player, your value goes up, and the urgency to bring you in goes up.
And the money you're about to make goes up.
It would have to. So for those guys who managed to stick out the summer who are still serviceable or even good NFL players, every day that you hear a sad story about somebody having, some kind of a catastrophic injury early on, those guys start to get phone calls. And, we've kind of wondered, gosh, will the Titans call one of these receivers? And I started to think about a week and a half ago, like if it hasn't happened by now, it's probably not going to happen. And I'm not so sure if they get another receiver, he's on somebody else's team right now and he's going to get cut.
I just still think that they need depth there, Mickey.
I do too.
I mean, I just have said that every day this week, I think.
I think so too.
They are one injury away from being back in the same spot that they were in last year, where they basically went up to New England without any receivers. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I actually went to that game. My wife's a big Pats fan. We had a great time. But the Titans had no bullets. I think NWI was maybe their number one receiver. And I remember Hollister, I caught like 3 passes that game.
He came out of mothballs and started that game.
I think the only guy that caught a touchdown pass might have been Jeff Swaim, maybe. They had nothing. The point is they're one injury away from that.
The point is they had nothing.
I'd add depth.
As my 7th grade geography teacher said about getting rid of nuclear weapons, you got to remember, kids, this is the early 80s during the height of the Cold War. And he goes, well, if everybody else keeps them and we get rid of them, what are we going to do? Throw rocks? So I've always thought about people throwing rocks at nuclear warheads, but they were throwing rocks in New England.
That's pretty good.
Now, one of the guys who'd be catching those rocks this year, hopefully, is Traylon Burks. So Traylon Burks comes back from a rough off-season. We didn't see him on the field. We didn't see him practicing, and that became a source of sports talk radio discussion. And some of you joined the discussion, and others of you were just so mad that it kept coming up. And Arkansas fans were just so put out and mad because everything's going to be okay. Well, maybe everything will be okay, but he was the only rookie not practicing. And it wasn't an injury related. It was more related to conditioning. And in this league, there's no I need to take a time out and have an orange slice in a juice box. There is no that. Yeah. People's lives are at stake. Their job, their NFL
their livelihood.
Their livelihood, thank you. I said it the wrong way. Their livelihood is at stake. Your teammates, your coaches, the staff, because everything gets cleaned out if there's a new administration. So everybody is counting on you. Now, by all accounts, that dude he lost 5 or 6 pounds. He's been out there doing all kinds of stuff, including today. We look over and we see there's guys catching punts. And I can't tell you who was catching punts, but I can tell you this. Mike Vrabel was asked about a certain guy catching punts after practice, and that was Traylon Burks. So now we can talk about it, and so can Mike Vrabel. And here is what the Titans head coach said about the rookie from Arkansas taking on another job today.
That you could secure the ball. I think that's where we're at right now. I think that one thing that he showed in college was that he was tough to tackle, with the ball in his hand. He could run after the catch. And so hopefully just trying to find as many places to get guys that can help us. And if he can catch and secure and make the first guy miss, then he has a chance to help us. But most importantly, he's got to be able to take care of the football. And I would say that there hasn't been an evaluation for the punt return job. Catching it from the jugs, maybe a few from the punter, from Stoney or Brett. But without gunners coming at you or without live action, that's been hard to, evaluate. I think that he's getting more comfortable catching them, and hopefully we can see him out there in preseason.
I got to tell you, if you had that on your bingo card, Traylon Burks returning punts on the second day of camp, then kudos to you.
I would have thought you had a losing bingo card.
Well, I would have thought you'd counterfeited that thing and that it didn't come from the game that the rest of us were even playing. That was a big surprise.
And you looked it up. How many punt returns has he had in his career? 13, right? And 12 of them were 4 years ago?
He had 13 as a total number at Arkansas. He had 13 punt returns. He averaged just over 10 yards per return. He had one as a sophomore because I believe that sound may have come from Teresa Walker. I'm not sure. Maybe it just came straight from the feed. But she had tweeted the quote from Mike Vrabel, and I thought, I went back and I Twitter searched. There's a guy named Hayden who is a young man I knew, graduated from Arkansas State while I was there. He's an anchor on THV 11, which is in Little Rock, their CBS affiliate. And I found a tweet from him from 2019 saying, well, looks like the Razorbacks have found their punt returner, Traylon Burks. So I went back and looked. Well, he returned 12. He had 12 punt returns his freshman year. He had one the next year. He was 13 for 134. So he was right at about 10 yards per punt return. Well,
that'd be cooking for the Titans.
If you could average 10 yards per punt return in the NFL, you could be a punt returner as long as you ever wanted to.
And the Titans have not had that very often.
So, what does that translate to? I don't know. I would say this. If you gave me truth serum or you said, okay, who do you want to be the punt returner? Traylon Burks, a first-round pick? I would say no. Yeah. I would say not in a million years. Because if I'm a gunner on special teams, the only way I'm on the roster is not because I'm a fantastic, wide receiver or I'm the best safety in the NFL. It's typically because I'm good at this, and this is what keeps me on the team and feeds my family and affords us a nice lifestyle because I'm great at going down and tackling guys, catching punts and kickoffs. Right. I don't want a guy whose life depends on making it. And my first-round pick, who I desperately need to be great for this team, just waiting on a ball to drop out of the sky while dudes are running at him full speed and he is not moving. Now, it's a tough thing for anybody to have to do it. Mark Mariani's one of the nicest dudes you ever meet. Well, that guy went out and
must be tough as nails.
Was one of the best. I mean, he's still the best single-season kickoff return average in the history of the Titans. He's got more yards, like 1,300 kick return yards, a kickoff return alone. And he was also a fantastic punt returner. And maybe even late in his career, they started trying to transition to Adoree Jackson and some others. Moonshine really should have been a return man, I think, for another year for this team. I think at least one more year. He's not here to defend himself, so I'll defend himself. He should have been the returner for at least one more year for this team.
After that leg injury?
Well, remember he went to the Bears, then he came back here and played one more year.
He came back.
And wasn't on the best special teams unit. Didn't get a lot of chances to return kicks, but was still had better numbers than I think Adoree did the next year. And Adoree was going to be the game changer of game changers at, punt returner.
The Titans have really had a really good punt returner. But I think they're probably, at least since Mike Vrabel has been here, have been guys on the roster that could have been better than who they were running back there. They're just making a business decision that it ain't going to be you, right? I mean, losing Trenton Cannon on a punt return matters a whole lot less than losing, all due respect to Trenton Cannon,
for sure,
Traylon Burks, right? Maybe Dontrell Hilliard's back there. I don't know who's going to be.
Well, Dontrell, to me, Trenton Cannon or Dontrell Hilliard are going to be the kick returner, and because he did it well. Now, I'm not trying to say anything that's on any field, if anybody's listening from the Titans. But if you go back and look at the way he was in college and for the role he's going to play on the team,
It makes sense.
well, if I have my druthers, it's Kyle Phillips. It's the guy from UCLA. He was a good punt returner in the Pac-12. Now,
A sneaky athlete, too.
his whole thing too looked a lot like maybe Mariani, who was this didn't turn into be the Mark Mariani Love Fest segment, but Mariani was probably faster and more explosive than he got credit for. But if you ask him about it, it's interesting to hear guys who are true return men like Craftsman, how they can see the angles. Like people said, Dale Earnhardt could see the air on restrictor plate tracks. He could read, he could see the air. He said, I can see it, which non-NASCAR people say that's not possible. Well,
it's like driving down I-24 and it's backed up and you're seeing moves 3 and 4 times early.
100%.
You're navigating your way.
Kyle Phillips seems to be that instinctive type punt returner. And I went back and watched a bunch of his punt return videos because that's something that they need to figure out. But to me, he's your guy who's going to develop in your slot receiver. And Mikazuki B says Kyle Phillips reminds me of Gary Williams from the 93 Houston Oilers.
That's a good throwback.
So there's a good pull.
I don't know anything about Gary Williams, but I'll take his word for it.
30 years ago. The gold standard of punt returners, kick returners for the team all time is, of course, the great Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Sure.
My man, Billy White Shoes Johnson. But
let me ask you this, though. Don't you feel like Mike Vrabel, more often than not, just puts the guy back there that's the best at catching it? Doesn't matter if he can run or not.
Well,
you got to catch it first. The Titans have had problems even catching it.
Was it 2018 or so that at the end of the year they just stopped trying to return them and they just had
Dory was letting the ball go over his head every time.
They put, was it Kevin Byard that they just put back there to catch him?
I can't even remember.
There was the end of the Texans game in 2018. I think they put LaShawn Sims back there.
Just to catch it, catch it, and do
that was at the
nothing
very end of the game. But I think they moved on from Adoree to Humphreys.
Oh, to Adam Humphries. I think that is right.
Well, but I think that was the hope, and then Adam Humphries was hurt all the time.
Right.
So not all the time, but hurt enough that he never saw the end of his contract.
He at least caught it.
I think you're right. I think they've just settled at times for, all right, Lucas can catch it. Just catch it. Don't,
because it can go both ways. I mean, Traylon Burks getting 10 yards a return gets you an extra first down. Well, Adoree letting it go over his head loses you 2.
Oh.
Do you remember? At least it's not what Derek Dooley would do. Where it got to a point where Derek Dooley just wouldn't put
anybody back there. Yeah, that's
just not
good.
put anyone
that's
back there.
Really
well,
good. Get off your stool.
What you can't have again. I keep saying they need to be a top 5 defense, and we need Tim Kelly to be. Well, it would be really interesting to see Tim Kelly help them freshen up their offense and modernize it some and take some of the predictability out of it and revamp the passing game because, by all accounts, he's the passing game coordinator and help him with the passing game, as we've been told now.
Your word yesterday I thought was great, layering. Or maybe it was you told me a story. Kevin Dyson's word was layering. That the Titans need to have some sort of cohesion where, what
one
they're
thing
doing
sets
early
up
is setting
thing.
up another.
Yes, and we were doing a post-game show last year, and Dice said, the one thing, and Dice, if you're listening, I'll try to say this right, I don't see the offense like this happens that sets up this, that builds the expectations for this, and then you do this instead. He said, it just seems like, and Dice, I know, well, he's teaching America's youth right now. He's not listening to the radio. He's still in school, Dr. Kevin Dyson. But it was something along the lines of,
school's out. He might be listening.
Oh, that's true. That's true. School's not in yet. He may be down there like stacking books in the library or something. But it was something along the lines of, the great play callers will set things up along the way. And he just said, they're just running plays. There's no rhyme.
It's just a
or reason.
collection of
It's just a collection of
calls.
stuff. And you talked about this yesterday of, they didn't have luck with scripted plays. The freaking scripted plays.
The scripted plays were horrible.
Like the stuff like, this is what we do best. It was hard to look at.
You got all week to script yourself the first few. Most people do 15. They played the 49ers. You saw the 49ers went down there, scored twice on them, looked like they were going to run them out of their own stadium, and the 49ers couldn't play anymore. That's the opposite of what the Titans were. Titans somehow, maybe it's Derrick Henry, maybe it's just it took that long for Tannehill to get in a groove. But fast starts, tempo, getting your quarterback in a groove is the next evolution of this offense. It's the next step it has to take. Last year, they were way too pedestrian in the first quarter. The good news is they were pretty good in second halves. But I think it's got to be a game plan that is designed to get your quarterback in a rhythm quickly to where he is feeling good about his role in the game. If you go 3 and outs to start your game and your quarterback's looking up with 11 minutes to go in the second quarter and he's 1 for 6, there's no rhythm there, even if you find it later in the game, right? Make your guy feel good about himself. Is he fragile? I don't think he's fragile, but he is a guy who has struggled in big moments. And so all the confidence you can breed into him via game plan, via coaching, you take that opportunity to do.
Let's pick this up on the other side. Let's pick this up in a little bit more. Also, going to hear from this Robert Woods, who's going to be part of this offense and hopefully a very big part. Talked about his knee and where he is right now. And he's a guy we've said over and over and over again, they need him to not just be good. They need him to be really good to great. How is he feeling right now? We'll hear from him on that, and we can continue this Titans offensive discussion. All right, no guests in this hour. You want to ask us any questions, you want to join the discussion, the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline is wide open. You can call us 615-737-1045. You can ask a question via Blaine and Mickey Twitter at Blaine and Mickey, or hit us in the Zone TV chat, and let's talk Titans. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Alex Apple hanging out for Blaine today. We appreciate that. Lots of participation today in the Zone TV chat. Appreciate that. Remember, anytime you want to join the discussion, you can call us 615-737-1045. We're talking about the Titans offense. Obviously, a big piece of that is going to be Robert Woods. Robert Woods had, as Alex was talking about, had some great years in Buffalo, and then he had some really nice years with the Rams. And when we're talking about trying to pick up the slack for A.J. Brown, Robert Woods was injured last year after 9 games. He had 556 receiving yards in 9 games, so he was on pace for 1,000. In the 3 previous years in Los Angeles before that, he averaged just over, let me make sure I got this right. He averaged, let me get this up here. Sorry, I'm on Pro Football Reference. I'm trying to get this right. In the 3 previous years to last year when he was injured, he averaged 1,000 yards on 90 catches. Those 3 years.
In a prolific passing offense.
Yeah, or just under 90, averaged like 89 receptions. 1,000 yards. This is in a prolific passing offense, of course, with Cooper Kupp. But
what would be your expectation for Robert Woods this year?
Well, I told you the Vegas over-under was 800.5, which oddly enough was the same number of yards for Traylon Burks.
On what, 65 catches?
Didn't have catches for either one of them. It had yards and touchdowns.
But I'm saying, what is your guess? I mean, he's kind of a possession guy. I mean, you're hitting Robert Woods on,
He
routes.
He averages 12 yards a catch in his career. So a true slot guy, if you look at slot guy numbers, usually they average like 10 and change. And
but I hope he's not a true slot guy. I hope he's a movement guy.
No, I'm saying if you look at slot guys, they're like usually about a 10-yard average, a lot of those guys. Tyreek Hill's average is not nearly what you think it is.
They throw it to him on a screen half the time.
His average is like 10 yards and change. I think 10 or 11. You can look it up. I think that's right. I think it's under 12. So Robert Woods' career average is 12. And he's also a guy who's coming off a knee injury. But like A.J. Brown, the thing about him, I mean, his career average.
Tyreek Hill 11.2 last year.
11.2.
Year before 14.7. That's pretty good. But
that's good for him.
Yeah.
Okay, so 11.2. And everybody think, Tyreek Hill is average. He averages 20 yards a catch. He doesn't. It's the way they use him. So A.J. Brown, I mean, his first year in the league, he had the second highest yards per reception his rookie year because he had like 51 catches or 52, I think. He had 1,000 yards his rookie year on 52 catches, I believe was the number. I think only Mike Williams of the Chargers had a higher yards per catch average, and it was maybe like a 1/10 of a yard or something like that. So AJ was like a 16, 17, 18 yards per catch guy on the average, which is just – that was like early Chris Sanders numbers with the Titans.
Yeah.
Like Chris Sanders' numbers were just stupid. What he averaged per catch. Tippy toes. Robert Woods, I think, is going to be a guy who catches a whole lot of, 10, 11, 12-yard passes for this team, but he's got to get healthy first. How is the knee feeling? He's been out there without a brace. He talked about it today when he met the media. Here's Robert Woods.
Good. Just go. Like I kind of said, kind of with the braces, more so just go and push it. It's strong enough. It's repaired. It's healed. It's more so about just actually doing it. So that's my mentality when I go out here and practice is push it and go. And you almost want to like push it to the limits and see what you can do. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Lucas, I know we played this at the very first segment of the show, but we should have the audio again if you can find it. Him talking about working out with Caleb Farley. Robert Woods and Caleb Farley both coming back from knee injuries. But I thought it was real interesting.
And Vrabel, I thought was encouraging today. This is a side note to our Robert Woods discussion, but Vrabel saying that Caleb Farley is past the thinking about your knee, more into the it's durable, it's healthy, he's confident, which is great to hear that you're starting training camp at that and not having to adjust to that on the fly. Past the mental hurdles of trusting his body again, is I believe how Mike Vrabel put it.
Your body is a wonderland. That's what John Mayer said. So hopefully we see that. So AJ and Julio combined 94 for 1303 last year. AJ and Julio. And
Not good enough.
When the Titans got Julio, there were people who this goes back to, we had a fantastic phone call in the first hour of the program today. A gentleman who said, what's the difference between having faith and being, what did he say? Faith versus fantasy, basically, in your team. Like, what's the difference in between realistic and hoping things happen versus the people who are completely unrealistic and just think everything's going to work out great? If I got to go to Vegas right now with some of Lucas Panzica's hard-earned cash, if I got to take some of his grocery money from his epic shopping sprees for his epic cooking moments that he has and places on Instagram, I don't think I would bet you any day of the week that Robert Woods and Treylon Burks, between the two of them, could top 94 for 1,303 and 6 touchdowns. That's what you got from AJ and Julio.
Yeah, Julio caught 31 balls.
Yep.
They better top that because that's the step forward the offense needs to take to have a more multifaceted passing game. You're going to get that from the tight ends. Austin Hooper, and I thought Robert Woods, just a little nugget today, called Chigakonkwo's speed rare, right? Robert Woods been in the league a long time. You're calling something rare means something to you. Makes me think he's good to contribute, and it makes me think there's a little bit more depth at running back. Derrick Henry actually was on pace for a lot more targets than you would have thought going into the season. His role was evolving a little bit before the injury. I think that quantifying this is difficult, and Robert Woods coming from a very different system.
Right.
He is not going to be a 90-catch guy, I don't think. I mean, I think you would put a 70, 800-yard Robert Woods season, and you'd say, thank you very much. I will take that right now, because if you could say, hey, Mickey, I'll give you 70 and 800 right now, but if you don't, I mean, he may have more, but he may have less. I'd take that right now is what I'm saying.
If you could sign up for that right now, he's going to go 70 for 800 and 5 touchdowns.
And let's do 800 divided by 70. That'll give you the number of yards per catch. Not explosive, but 5 touchdowns, okay. A.J. Brown had, 5 last year? That's 11.4 yards a catch.
Okay, then that's right in the wheelhouse. About a yard less than what he's been averaging. But you'll say, okay, let him get this knee under him again for a year, so maybe he averages a yard less per reception. That's about what that is.
You take that?
70 for 805 touchdowns? I'd rubber stamp that right now.
Me too.
I mean, 100%. Okay, then what's the number that you would take for Treylon Burks then?
Well, and he's the...
And that's under what Vegas says, yardage-wise, over-under.
And he is the biggest box underneath the Christmas tree. It could be an awesome gift, or it could just be a giant box of tube socks, right?
Well,
I mean, you don't know.
It could be a Jell-O mold made with
Are you asking what I would take? What you could offer me right now that I would take and forego a little bit of potential just to have? Kind of A.J. Brown's season last year. 63 catches. 800s, probably. That's a 300-yard improvement from your top 2 guys. I think you're relatively happy with that. Do you disagree with that? 63, 800. He probably needs to score 8 times.
Do you throw in for him, talking about Treylon Burks, and if you're just joining us, he returned punts in practice today. He was back there with the punt returners, and normally we couldn't tell you that, but it came up as a topic afterwards. Hopefully that was just learn how to catch him in case there was ever an emergency. Maybe that's all that is, because he did do that as a freshman at Arkansas. Do you also factor in with Burks, not punt returns, but like a couple times where he lines up in the backfield and runs the ball?
Yeah. 63 catches is barely over 3 a game.
Yep.
So I don't think you're setting the bar too right. Now, this is also assuming that you're going to get 16. I'm going to assume 16 games. Right? Misses 1. Most guys probably are going to miss 1. I'd hand it, I'd certainly unearth the Jonnu Smith sweep that they ran with pretty great effect 2 years ago.
Sometimes he just lined up in the backfield.
I'd figure out a way to get the ball. I'll never forget in Robert Woods' first season with Sean McVay, he had Robert Woods come behind the quarterback like it was going to be a pitch to him or like you would run for a reverse. And then he turns right back around before the snap of the ball and goes back out the other side. His guy, the guy that's guarding him in man coverage, ran all the way out the other side because he wasn't paying attention. Wide open. I mean, to manufacture touches like that for these guys, I think it's great. And I think you can get a little bit of that from Robert Woods, too.
How much do you trust this offense to be creative like that?
Well, see, now you're asking a lot. I don't know.
Because
all I know is you've looked at the guy on another team and saw how he was utilized. Copy the freaking play if you have to, right?
I mean, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Isn't that what they say?
And nobody's coming up with new plays much at this point. Rarely is that, you're trying to fine-tune ways to disguise what you're doing. Whatever that takes, they did a good job with that with Robert Woods in L.A. That's what you've got to do as a Titan. It doesn't need to be all that fancy. You do have Derrick Henry. That is a big separator. But I'll tell you who else I think has got to contribute, because I go back to the wide receiver depth that they don't have. I think they need 50 catches from Kyle Phillips. From a slot guy. You have a way different perception of NWI than I do.
My perception of NWI is just I go to practice every day and I see who else there is. Like my perception of it, he's a great story, by the way.
I'm not into the story. I do like his story. I'm talking about just the numbers.
I'm just telling you.
I want just numbers.
The numbers on him there's just nobody else. There's nobody else.
That's the problem.
Unless they go get Emmanuel Sanders or Will Fuller to play his 7 games, whatever it is, he's just the other person. And if there's any questions about, well, Traylon Burks is a rookie and it's a complex position to learn and all that, okay. And Robert Woods is a great veteran and has had a couple 1,000-yard seasons and almost another 1,000-yard season with the Rams. But he is coming off a knee injury, and I guess it was last November, so he's not even, quite at a year. So who's fully healthy, that's fully versed in the offense, who they said on Tuesday can run all 3 positions at receiver? Guess who? NWI.
I'm not taking that lightly. Would you say that it's more likely that Kyle Phillips develops a role in the slot, or that they just play Woods, Traylon Burks, and NWI, and one of them lines up in the slot because they figure, maybe Traylon Burks only plays one position to start the season, but NWI and Robert Woods just move around, right? More likely they just go with that top 3, or that they get that slot guy in Kyle Phillips.
I think a lot of that depends on Kyle Phillips.
Well, of course.
I mean, I think a lot of that depends on, because if I'm the Titans, I'm like, hey, Kyle Phillips, just know you're going to be super busy in the preseason because you're going to probably field just about every punt that needs to be fielded, and you're also going to play in the slot a lot.
Because I go back to Tannehill's first season, and a lot of Titans fans will remember Adam Humphries catching the ball over the middle against the Kansas City Chiefs when they upset the Kalu blocked kick that game. And that really put the Titans on the map with Ryan Tannehill. That season, you got 37 catches from Adam Humphries. He only played 12 games.
Yeah.
You really missed him at the end of the season. But it felt like you had a weapon that in the last 2 seasons the Titans have not had there in the middle, a chain mover.
Yeah.
You also had Jonnu that year. That's what was missing last year. That's why I think Kyle Phillips or something akin to that role, and I'm not just saying Kyle Phillips because he's kind of small and looks kind of like Adam Humphries. It has nothing to do with
he's
that.
a true slot receiver.
It could be anybody.
Yeah, well,
but you've got to have that slot weapon.
The other, who it was, though, briefly, until they tried to overplay their hand on him, was Ferkser.
Yeah.
He was that.
Yeah,
He
7
was that
yards in
guy.
cloud of dust.
That was him.
Yeah.
You need 6 yards, he'll get you 7 yards. You need 14 yards, he'll get you 7 yards. I mean, that was Ferkser.
I think that they think that they've got something in Kyle Phillips. It just is not quite making sense why they don't have another guy. It's almost like fool me once, fool me twice. You're kind of tempting the fool me twice because you didn't have a ton of depth last year. It seems like we're going down that route again.
Traylon Burks had 15 carries. He had 9 carries as a freshman at Arkansas. He had 15 carries as a sophomore. He had 14 carries as a junior for 112 yards and a touchdown. So he was, as a rusher, 38 for 222 at Arkansas. He threw 7 passes.
Wow.
He threw
That's
7 passes. He returned like 13 punts and 12 kickoffs. I mean, he did everything but drive the bus and mix the Gatorade.
Yeah.
That's
just kind of Debo-ish.
Yeah. And he's a bigger guy. Debo just looks thick even on TV. Like, Debo looks like I wouldn't want to tackle that guy.
He's a train.
Well, look at Traylon Burks.
Even bigger.
Let's go look at him. I don't think I'd want to tackle him either. Jason in Nashville is on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline and wants to join the discussion. Thanks, Jason. What you got, man?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Love your show.
Oh,
Hey,
thank you.
so quick 2 points I wanted. One, what I called originally about was, it just seems like with the Titans, and you can say this with other teams, seems like when their offense is clicking, then their defense is taking a hit. When their defense is clicking, it seems like now there's something back with the offense. Like you can't never get that complementary football that you really strive for. And then my second thing is, even with bringing these receivers in, and that they had talent like the guy that's been injured that we're hoping it bounces back from it, you still got to build chemistry with that quarterback. And some receivers don't do it. It takes them a full season with a quarterback and an offensive coordinator to really get into that. They can't just repeat what they did in another offense that quickly. So I'm just concerned about that. Just wanted to hear what you had to say. Thanks, man.
Appreciate the call, Jason. While he was saying that, I looked at the schedule from last year because I had it pulled up from something else we were talking about earlier. They beat the Bills 34-31. They beat the Colts 34-31, where you could say that was a shootout.
Yeah.
But
certainly that Buffalo game.
But a lot of games that they win typically are low-scoring games. They don't win a lot of games for both teams. You can't just think back of, there's a lot of times where the Titans scored 35 and the other team scored 33 or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't seem to be the blueprint for them on how to win games.
Yeah.
And
when the Titans score 30, they usually win.
Yeah. And, this was an offense that 2 years ago scored 30 points.
9 games in a row, I think. At one point.
And their average was like just under 31 points or so per game, which we haven't seen anything like that around here, and maybe never.
To the caller's point about being able to play complementary football, I think we know what the defense is. I do think that the offense has way more weapons this year. They're not all at receiver. You got to stay healthy, but I think they have way more weapons to approach a diverse offense the way that they did 2 years ago when, as you were saying, they averaged 30 points a game. I think that's within the realm of outcomes. I don't know that last year, given now what we know about Julio and that he was never going to stay healthy, I don't think that was in the realm of outcomes. You had lost Jonnu. You had, it just was sort of pared down from the previous year. You didn't even, Khalif Raymond, I don't think a ton of Khalif Raymond, but you didn't have Khalif Raymond, who was a speed element in your offense. I mean, would you say that this roster is close to 2 years ago offensively?
Boy,
A.J. Brown at that point was no sure thing. I mean, he was young. You had Corey Davis, who is worse than Robert Woods. When they're both right, Corey Davis is a poor man's Robert Woods. They're kind of similar.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him. I saw he lost a bunch of weight. He's down to like 205 or
He
something.
might be back with the Titans next year. The Jets draft is clearly showing that he is not in the long-term plans.
Corey Davis was one of those guys where he was the 5th overall pick. If he'd been taken in 2nd or 3rd round or something like that,
you'd have thought he was awesome.
It'd have been like, hey man, this is great, but my gosh, he just got overdrafted. And it was maybe it's the system, and he didn't get a lot of targets. And if you're him, you could say, hey man, I can only live with what they throw my way. I can only do as well as the targets they give me. But he was just overdrafted, for no more opportunities than a receiver gets.
And that wasn't a strong wide receiver draft class.
No, it wasn't.
John Ross was in there.
Oh, heavens to Betsy.
He was way better than John Ross.
And Mike Williams, I guess, was
Williams
the other guy.
That's right.
Maybe
you'd have rather had
those
Mike Williams.
Big three. He would have maybe have been the better of those three options. But
I think this offense is kind of close to the way it was constructed 2 years ago.
Well, if you go back and look at 2019, because I did this one night, which that's the most efficient year that Tannehill's had. Somebody the other day tweeted me and said, stop talking about efficiency. He needs to win playoff games. Okay. But when I'm talking about efficiency, then I'm talking about efficiency.
That's true. I'm actually meaning 3 years ago. I'm saying 2. I'm meaning that AFC Championship year.
2019.
When Tannehill took over.
Let's do this. When we come back, I'll tell you who the receivers were in 2019.
Okay.
And you tell me if you don't think that, to make your point, that was the best year that he had as far as efficiency. He started 10 games that year, won like comeback player of the year.
Right.
Who are the receivers that year? This is an eye-opener. We'll share that next. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. So Alex Apple's hanging out for Blaine, and we're having this discussion about, like, the best we've seen of Ryan Tannehill and who are the receivers and what did they bring to the table. And I got, like Lucas will tell you, I'll just get to rabbit holing, like, for a whole night on stats. Then I'll come in the next day and ask Blaine and Lucas, like, 7 odd stat questions, and I try to stump them. And I know Lucas hates that, but he's smiling right now. Do you hate it when I try to stump you with stats?
No, I highly enjoy it because I enjoy when I am just so incredibly wrong. Like, I'll either completely undershoot it or overshoot it.
So Ryan Tannehill, in all of his years, 6 years in Miami and 3 in Tennessee, his 2019, when he came in and started the last 10 games, he came in and mopped up for Marcus in Denver, which is the game that haunts poor Buck Rising, that if you bring up, he will just melt down talking about it.
Joe Flacco.
Oh, my gosh. Just an awful, horrible thing to watch. And he was there to see it in person. Luckily, I was not. Oh, that's a beautiful city, and I enjoyed my time there. So Ryan Tannehill comes in. Things start rolling from there. So he starts 10 games for the Titans. In those 10 games, his yards per attempt was 9.6. The closest he's ever come to that, ever again, or at any point in his career, was the next year. It was 7.9 in 2020. Last year, it dropped to 7. So his yards per attempt has dropped 2.6 yards in the last 3 years.
But for all this hand-wringing over receivers, now read us, because let's land this plane. I think it makes the point that we were driving at. Read us the receivers from 2019.
Well, his yards per completion led the league, yards per attempt. His
9.6.
His yards per completion was 13.6. That led the league. He's never had 12. He's had 12.1 the next year. So that's the only 2 times he's ever topped 12 yards. He was 13.6. So a full yard and a half more completion than he'd ever done in his career. His quarterback rating in 2019, Tannehill, was 117.5. The next year it was 106.5. That's the only 2 times he's ever been over 100. Or even over, I'm looking at it, even over 90.
What was he last year?
4. Last year he was 89.6. But he got his brains beat in. He got sacked 47 times, which is the second most he's ever been sacked in a season, behind 58 in his second year in Miami. So you're thinking, boy, like, these are just unbelievable numbers. Like, he was the AP Comeback Player of the Year, which is typically the version of the award that the NFL, they recognize. That's the NFL's, that's it. Like, somebody could win it from the Garden Club of New Jersey or, Edna's Book Club of Franklin. But the one that the NFL recognizes is the AP award. That's for MVP or Comeback Player of the Year, which, by the way, somebody in the Zone TV chat said he thinks Robert Woods is going to win it. I think Derrick Henry's going to win it. I think Derrick Henry will be.
I didn't even really think about him as an option.
Derrick Henry's going to be the AP Comeback Player of the Year. That's what I think. And I think Robert Woods will be good, but I think Derrick Henry's going to win it this year. I would go and put money on that for sure. So you're thinking he led the league in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He led the league in 6 total passing categories that year. It was by a mile the best quarterback rating that he's had, his yards per attempt the best that he's had, his yards per completion, so many different things. So you think, man, I'm just trying to think
Must
here.
have had some good guys around.
Gosh, who were the receivers? Was it, Haywood Jeffries, and was it,
Billy White Shoes?
Billy White Shoes Johnson, and was it, Drew Bennett and Derek Mason? No, here's who it was.
He wishes he had peak Drew Bennett.
The peak Derek Mason. I'd take all that you could throw at me. A.J. Brown led those Titans in receptions with 52.
As a rookie.
52 as a rookie. And he got 1,051 yards. You've got to go all the way to 43 catches to get Corey Davis at number 2.
Okay.
And again, this is the most efficient year that Tannehill had by a mile. So you think, did anybody else have over 40? No.
How many did Humphreys have?
37. And he was next.
37. Yeah.
Jonnu Smith had 35. So that's only 4 guys who had 30 or more catches on the team because nobody else did. So you're like, who was next? Dion Lewis. Remember him?
Ah, yes.
Catching his 25 balls out of the backfield. Next, here's another ghost from the past who can't seem to stick on another roster. It's been fascinating.
Ferkser. Oh,
no,
Tajay.
Tajay Sharp. He had 25.
So
Delaney Walker had 21. That's everybody who had more than 20 catches.
Does this not make the point then that this Titans offense has that potential? That was AFC Championship Titans offense. Tannehill looked really good. Derrick Henry was rolling. Good Lord. You've got Austin Hooper, Chig, NWI. I'll grant you that. Traylon Burks, a young comparable to AJ Brown.
Better hope.
I think Robert Woods, if he's healthy, is better than Corey Davis was that year. If Robert Woods puts up those Corey Davis numbers that he had that year, we will all be disappointed.
If Robert Woods is healthy, he's better than Corey Davis, and he's better than the bulky version of Julio that you had last year.
We should make one point here that they did start the season with Mariota. That depresses those numbers a little bit.
It depresses the receiving numbers, yes.
Right. But that collection of receivers.
That scare anybody?
Scares nobody.
Right.
Scares nobody.
Well, these dudes over here
are better than that.
And currently not scaring anybody.
So that realm, that is within the potential for this Titans offense to be what that team became. To the caller's point, we got on this because the guy called last segment and talked about complementary football. If your defense is top 5, like we think it has the potential to be, and your offense finds a way to be efficient with this collection of talent, there you go.
Top 5 defense and a top 15 offense that can control the clock and hold on to the ball, which is what they want to do.
And use Derrick Henry just enough.
We got phone calls. Let's jump on here. You want to join in on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, 615-737-1045. Steve in Nashville, and then James in the Borough will wrap us up today. Steve, how in the world are you?
Steve, doing great, Mickey. Miss Blaine, tell him we said hi.
I think you just did, yeah. Hey, Hitman.
Okay, so I've been having to listen to this stuff all the time from J. Mark Ramon and all this stuff about Ryan Tannehill, and everybody's on him. Of course, he had a terrible game, so I know that's something that's going to go down people's memories. But, I mean, I just can't help but think everything you've been talking about, what you've been mentioning just right now, and also the fact that if you look at those numbers, he got sacked like you said, but every year it's like the entire NFL figured us out more and more and more. You expect a quarterback to do something every time you leave him third and long, and everybody's expecting to pass. Defense is gearing up on him, and like you basically they can do our playbook for us almost. So how do you expect a quarterback to survive and succeed in something like that? And I guess what's your thoughts on that? Thanks.
We kind of lost you there, Steve, at the end. The question didn't quite come through at the end.
Yeah, the question got lost. I think what he's saying is the things – I've just been trying to tell people, don't sleep on Ryan Tannehill. Get the offensive line rebuilt around him. He will have Derrick Henry, so there's the play action will work again like it did. And if you can win all the way to the AFC Championship game and be leading that game, in the second quarter – with that group of, and I'm not knocking, Delaney missed a bunch of games that year, and Adam Humphries missed games that year. I'm not knocking any of those guys, but you had a bunch of guys who had trouble staying healthy, and nobody who put up big numbers. AJ is a rookie who, was 52 balls. So there's plenty of potential over there if you can protect Tannehill because he has his main number one guy behind him in Derrick Henry. Let's squeeze in one more phone call. James in the Borough. James, thanks for holding. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I appreciate it. Hey, I know kicking the can down the road with this whole Marcus Mariota and Tannehill, but at the end of the day, I kind of think it looks like, Marcus went through a bad couple of years, coordinators, coaches, everything. When Tannehill came in, was there a big market for Tannehill out there?
No, the Dolphins paid the Titans money to take him.
Please take him.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the Titans take him, and after a 10-game body of work, the Titans thinks, oh, this is our glory child, and they throw all this money, making their franchise quarterback, and then things starts going backwards because the first year with Marcus, he had nothing to lose. He could play loose, free. This is my opinion. He had no pressure. Marcus had all the pressure. So when he came in, it was just sling it, have fun, and whatever happens, happens. And then we've seen this decline, and then it's like, oh, blah, blah, blah with Tannehill. Well,
you don't think Ryan Tannehill feels pressure?
No. Well, now he does.
I think he does.
Now he does because he's pretty much, not living up to the first 10 games that he played with the Titans.
I'll say this,
now,
James.
Now everybody's beating him up.
I think James just racked himself and
He's out.
We lost a call. Hey, dude, Ryan Tannehill was playing for his life as an NFL starter that season because it's like bands. My friend in the Little River Band told me, he goes, we were on top of the world in the 80s, and we put out another album, and our A&R guy told us, if this thing doesn't go,
you're out.
Then you're going to be in the cutout bin forever. You're going to go to the oldies circuit. Tannehill was it like Joe Flacco. He's not a starter anymore. He's relegated to the cutout bin.
What I don't know what that caller was getting at. Maybe some sort of Marcus Mariota praise.
No, I think he was saying that when Tannehill was thrown in 2018 or 2019, that there was no pressure. He was the backup. He had nothing to lose, so he was just playing freely. He wasn't going into the season as a starter.
And now he feels pressure.
Right, but going into 2020, 2021, and now 2022, he's saying there's probably more pressure there as the starter, as the guy, as opposed to just being thrown in as the backup.
But
if you succeed, great. If you don't, then nothing really changes.
That's being an NFL quarterback. There's going to be pressure on that.
Well, and he's got pressure because, there's always going to be the pressure of his cap hit and moving on from it.
But the point is, look how good he made that 2019 group that we just went all the way through. Look, that's within the realm of outcomes again.
Well, look,
he just won 12 games.
12 games with no Derrick Henry and, Julio beat up and AJ missing some time. And so, look, was it the greatest season in the world? No. Was he the second coming of Warren Moon? No. But he's the right guy at the right time, I think. I'm just telling you what I see. I think he's the right guy at the right time. We'll pick up this discussion and more. Right now, it's time for us to go. 3HL is coming up next. I'm sure they'll carry the Titans discussion on down the road.
In the meantime?
In between time, peace.